very profound spiritual manner, after which we may never be the same. And evidently this event was such an event. We could say that Lincoln had been given a vision of the end of his life. In any case, this book was so fascinating. I meant to use it for research, and 10 o'clock at night, I often work past midnight. 10 o'clock at night, I got a bookshelf at the head of the bed, and I just plopped on the bed and grabbed the book and decided I'd read laying down. And I went through a few spots in that book, like I say, I go through something often really quickly, and I just kind of thumbed through this part by part, and about 2/3 of the way through the book, I just reached something that just riveted my attention. And I just stopped and began to read diligently, with earnest interest in what I was reading. And before you know it, it's 5 in the morning, and I reached the end of the book. I was tired. I crashed for a couple hours. I got up again, and in fact, I could think of nothing but what I had just read. And when I got up, though I had work to do, I grabbed the book off the shelf again and started at the beginning. And 10 o'clock that night, I'd read through the entire book again to the end again. It's one of the most fascinating pieces of literature I've ever had the blessing to study. So a thing that I do when I get a book often is I just kind of let it fall open somewhere. I can remember actually when I was a little boy, I did this with the Bible. The first time I went to read the Bible, and I'll never forget the first words that I read. They were, "Beware the hypocrites." In any case, when this creature of Jekyll Island arrived, a second look at the Federal Reserve, so said, I just opened the book, and it opened on page 153, and I'm looking at it, and there's a large, all capitalized word, law, 3 letters, L-A-W. That caught my eye immediately. So I immediately read that, and I'm thinking, let me first give you my thoughts. Law. I saw this word law, and I thought, well, who is this guy Griffin, who's an Austrian economist, and now he's going to propose laws, or laws of economy, which there isn't. There's a this is how preposterous of a scientist he would be if he pretended to be a scientist, and I hope he's not. A true science is comprised entirely, as somebody like Neil Dyson could readily articulate for you. A science is comprised of proofs, of theorems. Now, a theory is an unproven theorem, but a theorem is a proof. That is, if we have this obfuscation of the currency, there would be a proof that indeed you have to pay the interest and principal to the peripheral banks, which are going to pay to the central bank, and this money would be out of circulation, and there would have to be a way for it to get back into circulation. The peripheral banks only take a slice of the interest. So how is that money going to get back into circulation? So there would be a proof that would relate to the possible ways, and this doesn't mean, of course, that we have to enumerate every conceivable way of potentially infinite ways. No, we do things like classify them, that it can come by producing a service, as Griffin had proposed would resolve this issue. Or we could do it, we could give up property. And then we would evaluate the ramifications of property because of giving up property, for instance, because if we did that, and if that was a genuine and justifiable way for that money to get back into circulation, this would immediately make the central banking system not only the owners of our debts, but the owners of the equity that we would otherwise justly accumulate. So it would just transfer all wealth immediately to the banking system. Well, when I came up with this theory of mathematically perfected economy, these are the theorems that I wrote. And for this pretender Griffin to think that I haven't accounted for these things somehow, and we'll get to that in the end of this discussion about Griffin here. To think that I hadn't somehow is, well, he says it's childish. My thinking is childish. Now, that's not science, and it's not taken as an insult because it's Griffin's insult to me. Science is the answer, the science, and here he has used the word law. Well, if he had a science, what would the word be, ladies and gentlemen? It would be theorem. Theorem of whatever he's about to state there. But the word is law. So you can understand how I haven't even discovered these other things that I've mentioned yet. This is the first opening of the book, and I never read his first book. I have a copy of Mullins. I haven't even read that. This word that strikes my eye is the word law. So I read this then. My eyes just rivet to the first thing in this book. And I'll read it to you now. What it says is, for a nation to enjoy economic prosperity and political tranquility, the monetary power of its politicians must be limited solely to the maintenance of honest weights and measures of precious metals. Whoa! If he's plagiarized my work, I said to myself, how did he draw the deduction from it that gold would save us? And in all the reading I did, which, I've got half the book plus under my belt, and I've skimmed through the rest. It's disgusting. But I guarantee you there's no proof that gold can save us. There isn't even just there's the scantest dogma offered which more or less states such a thing, but never in this entire book is there an accountable explanation how. There isn't even an accountable explanation or even proposition how we would even transform the conditions of the present system into a return to the gold standard. But this statement is preposterous in many other ways, although it's a simple sentence. But what do we do? Do we read with our eyes and ears closed? Do we just read that and say, that's a law, for instance? How could it possibly be? What about it is a law? What about it is any government? It hasn't even stated how government is to do what he says it should be limited to do. How? Now, if we're to buy into that, do we not need to know how? So what is this? What is this statement? For a nation to enjoy economic prosperity and political tranquility, the monetary power of its politicians. Okay, we have two things going on here on the most basic level. That is, we have a condition upon which, only upon which, a nation can enjoy economic prosperity and political tranquility. Well, in truth, I myself would say, as I watched this G.O.P debate, all you had is smiling faces and superficial answers, and this didn't offend anyone while there's mattresses in storefronts all through town. I went to the next town and there's one emergency medical clinic. And if you looked at strictly the front of the building, you think, oh God, good thing I'm having appendicitis here, knock on the door, Well, it's not open. Emergency medical clinic, not open. That's what the sign says the place is, and it looks like it could have been open yesterday, but it's not. And what's in the large, otherwise empty parking lot? A huge fifth wheel trailer. It's a big sign on the side, beware of dogs. That's not the only vehicle the people are living in. Next to it is a regular pickup truck, this huge fifth wheel trailer, which is towed by a larger truck. There's a regular sized pickup truck next to it. And on that is stacked all these mattresses and some furniture, and there's a trailer behind it full of furniture and all plastic tarped over, living in the parking lot. Living in the parking lot. And the words we're reading are about saving us from that somehow. So, what are we, mindless fools? Do we do the math? How much monetary gold do we have on hand? Well, the CIA fact book has given a number for many years. It's been about $80 billion. Divide 300 million people into $80 billion and you come out with $266 per capita. And that's to resolve all our debts, pay the rent, pay for our medical bills, especially when we're going to pay it out of circulation to a banking system. Not a word in here about how to resolve the sum of debt. This isn't about saving us. This is about G. Edward Griffin collecting a few paychecks on probably a relatively fabulous house. But this is such blasphemy in every way. So he says this, what's going to save us then? Give us economic prosperity and political tranquility. And mind you now, he's an Austrian economist, and they advocate banking. So, in truth, he's divorcing himself from Austrian economists. And as I've mentioned before, if you want to peer into the minds of the so-called Austrian economists, it is truly one of the most preposterous pseudosciences that's ever existed on Earth. Certainly, just read one paper to see for yourself, because Friedrich Hayek is an arch god, a demigod of the Austrians, as they call themselves. And there's a paper which, I at least would have taken this down a long time ago, because it's it would be such an embarrassment to me. But here is Hayek, one of the leading Austrians, speaking in 1975. Of course, 62 years after we've got a Federal Reserve System, which is 12 private banks. And it's the text of a speech in which he decries that we'll never have honest money again until the power to issue money is returned to private bankers, because it's